Nkuhlu is a top executive at a major multinational company in South Africa. She was the project lead for the recently opened Mvezo School of Science and Technology, bringing life to a dream that Nelson Mandela had for his hometown. At the pinnacle of success today, her life began in 1970 as the only black child in an orphanage in East Germany. Thank you so much for joining us on eNCA. You have a remarkable story, an incredible journey of how you ended up where you are today in a highly successful position. You were born in East Germany in 1970, a Xhosa mum, a Cambodian dad. How did that happen?
My mum she needed to leave South Africa due to the apartheid regime at the time. And my dad, the first inklings of the Khmer Rouge in Cambodia were starting to show their faces. So a lot of Cambodians, I guess, were sending their children off to another country to go and study. And the East seems to have been the preferred choice.
Was your mum part of the ANC?
My mum herself not. My grandfather, however, did write some literature. He was lecturing at the University of KwaZulu-Natal at the time. And he wrote some literature in Xhosa, which found its way in the wrong hands translated. So the family had to flee. They ended up in Zambia with the assistance of the ANC. And my mum then, with her other siblings, received bursaries and scholarships to go and study.
It did not go down well with the ANC when it was discovered that your mother was pregnant. Why was that?
Because there was a purpose for her being there. And she was supposed to study and become a contributing member of society, you know, once, and part of the ruling society, I guess, once she returned, having been educated. So this was kind of, she was straying from the path, from the set path for her.
They advised her to have an abortion.
Yes, yeah. So, but what she decided was that she was her own individual, and my family is very religious. So abortion was not on the cards for her personally, in spite of the advice that she received from her superiors. She was 19 when she had me.
She didn't give you up for adoption, and yet you did end up being brought up largely in orphanages, am I correct, in East Germany?
Yeah. Well, what she tried to do was to raise me as best as she could. It was not possible to keep a child in a closed environment all day long while, you know, a student was off studying. So eventually, I guess I ended up in an orphanage. I spent a lot of time in there.
How old were you when you first went into the orphanage?
I think I was 4 months old or so.
What are your earliest memories?
My earliest memories of the orphanage is a nun actually singing a lullaby to me. I didn't see my mum too much though, because she was still required to study. So I grew up largely under the curatorship, if you will, of the orphanage system.
Is it as grim as it sounds?
It was indeed. There is no way of sugarcoating this. Being a black child essentially in a white environment, the only black child, was a challenge for me. I guess what that taught me mostly was to ensure that I stay under the radar essentially. So the battle was much harder for me than for my peers at the time, even though we were all coming from atrocious situations essentially. You know?
What actually happened in the orphanage that made it so difficult for you personally?
It was that I was different. It was that I was smaller in stature. I was small built. So I was what they call the negerkus.
What is that?
What that is actually a piece of candy with a brown chocolate around it. Negerkus.
From the word nigger?
Exactly.
So
exactly.
Incredibly derogatory.
Yeah. So for me it was about literally staying under the radar and making sure that I was not bullied too much. But I mean, bullying took place. I mean, these are all children, myself included, who were excluded from society at the end of the day and in a systematic way kept away from societies.
There's an incredible story about the eggs that you used to receive every Friday. So I would imagine even the food you got, you didn't get enough food, am I right?
Food was there within you know, what you get on a plate was standard across. But by the time I got to the table to sit down, pieces of my food or ingredients would be missing, and simply bullying, you know, along the way. To this day, I love eggs as a result. It was having to defend not only one's existence, but the means to one's existence.
Your reflections on that time, now that you're an adult, now that you are mother to a child yourself?
I guess my reflection would be that that was part of my history I couldn't do without, simply because it made me a stronger person. It made me a more balanced individual. I don't take things for granted very easily. It helped mold me, gave me the values that I hold today, which are to make sure that, you know, you're on a fairly stable path.
Did you ever meet your father?
No, unfortunately I did not. I do have some memories of him in my mind, but I cannot tell whether it's, you know, a real memory or not.
Do you ever want to meet him? Is it something that interests you?
I've had his name with me for the longest time. I guess if I really wanted to, I could have made the effort to find him.
You grew up in East Germany in an orphanage. You became a foster child at some point. Was that in West Germany?
Yes, it was. Well, partly in East Germany, but also in West Germany. I started going into foster families from around the age of 7. My foster parents, the many that I had, were mostly in West Germany, in various areas.
In terms of identity, if I had to ask who Rita Nkuhlu is, are you Cambodian, are you South African, are you German?
I would have to say I'm absolutely South African, with German mixed into it, and then an Asian heritage along with that. The reason why I say South African is because unlike my mom left Zambia or Africa at the age of 16. I came back at the age of 16. So what I treasured the most about being in South Africa is that people were like me. At the time when I returned, which was in '86 at the age of 16, my mom decided to come back. And of course, still being an apartheid era, she didn't come back directly to South Africa, but via Swaziland and then into the Transkei, which is where our family roots are. When we came back, it was all about family identity. I tried to learn Xhosa as quickly as I
Are you fluent now?
I wouldn't say I'm fluent, but I can certainly hold my own in a conversation.
Meeting South African family, your uncle, for example, Wiseman Nkuhlu, who's the Chancellor of the University of Pretoria, South Africa's first black chartered accountant, quite an amazing man. Was it very healing to meet your South African family? Did it heal some of those wounds from your childhood in East Germany?
Actually, it was. I was extremely overwhelmed at first. When I came to South Africa, or the Transkei at the time, I had 32 aunts.
Lots of love.
My grandmother took me under her wing, and one of the first things she explained to me is how the family tree is made up and where everybody's in, and you know what our actual roots are, etc. So it was very, very interesting that there was an interest by my family for me to integrate and for me to get an understanding of what the family is all about. Uncle Lumkile Wiseman being one of those individuals. So I hadn't known him when I first, when we came back to South Africa. But meeting such huge family actually, and such a caring family was really, really great for me. It was, you know, finally being in a community as opposed to being alone.
So extraordinary that in South Africa in 1990, Nelson Mandela is released from prison, signaling a massive change for our country. At the same time, in your adoptive country of Germany, the Berlin Wall comes down and the reunification of East and West Germany occurs. That is surely very personally significant for you. Does it sort of resonate for you on a personal level, those two political developments?
Absolutely. And the reason why it does is because Utata, of course, was imprisoned for an ideal that he held, and he was ready to die for it, and part of that ideal was to ensure that my generation and the generation coming after me would be able to fulfill its own dreams. In the same way, when you look at the Berlin Wall, essentially a family that was divided by circumstances, by politics, was reunited. So it was extremely significant in that sense that it is possible to reunite, and it is possible to then start the healing process.
And it's never too late for the healing process.
Exactly.
What's wonderful for me is that you are now in the process of adopting a daughter. She's 13 now, Nikita. You started fostering her from the age of 5. Also such a wonderful thing to do, given that you had such a rootless childhood. Tell us about Nikita.
Oh, Nikita is an absolute gem. She does come from a disadvantaged background. When I first met her, she sparked off something in my heart because it's something I could relate to. Nikita is the niece to my partner, who I'm now married to. I immediately felt that I needed to protect this little girl, you know, from whatever harsh things life had to offer.
What's remarkable about your story is that it is not perfect. And so much of life is not perfect, but you've managed to reclaim so much, coming to South Africa, meeting your 32 aunts and being surrounded by love as a teenager, and you've moved then into a highly successful career. You were the project lead on the Mvezo School of Science and Technology, which was completed in January. How's that school going?
That school is going very well. The students are extremely excited still. I guess we have a partnership in that sense that Siemens, the Mvezo Community Department of Education, has put together a very strong school, including very strong teachers, and the students are bringing their end of the bargain by really working hard at getting themselves out of their own disadvantaged environment.
You're in a strong leadership position as a woman. Do you think generally women are uncomfortable to lead, and is it something you grapple with?
I don't grapple with it. Leadership is something that women already have inherently in them. We lead every single day. We are role models to our children. We are role models in the schools interaction, in the interaction that we have at schools. We spend our time trying to make things better, serving. And to me, being a servant is synonymous with being a leader.
Looking back at your life today, thinking of the little girl who was born in East Germany in 1970 and the road she's travelled and the incredible difficulties she's endured. If you could have a sit-down chat with her today and give her one really important piece of advice that perhaps she missed or perhaps she battled with, what would you tell her?
I guess I would have to tell her to stand up taller. She's stronger than she believes she is, and that standing tall is not necessarily a sign of pride, but a sign of an individual who understands themselves most of all, understands the environment that she's in, and even more importantly understands that she needs to be of service. That's what I would say to her.
Coming up next, we meet another extraordinary woman who turned a passion for planes into a remarkable career.
The sky is not even the limit. You can do it. If you have a dream, don't let it die.
News that moves. eNCA.com.